last time we have done up to this slide discussing about the gross body. We discussed about the Sthula Sharira and the process of Panchikarana, and generally how, what is the composition of this gross physical body. We'll now go to the subtle body or the Sukshma Sharira. Sukshma Shariram Kim? अपंचीकृत पंचमहाभूतैः कृतं सत्कर्मजन्यं सुख दुःखादि भोग साधनं पंच ज्ञानेन्द्रियाणि पंच कर्मेन्द्रियाणि पंच प्राणादयः मनश्चैकं बुद्धिश्चैका एवं सप्तदश कलाभिः सह यत् तिष्ठति तत् सूक्ष्म शरीरम्. What is the Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body? The reply given is that that which is composed of the 5 Mahabhutas or elements, prior to their undergoing the 5 processes of Panchikarana, born of good actions of the past, the instruments for experience of pleasure, pain, etc., constituted by the 17 items or 17 aspects or phases, namely the 5 Jnanendriyas, that is the 5 sense organs, then the 5 Karmendriyas or the 5 organs of action, the 5 Pranas, Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana and Samana, the mind and the intellect. All this composes the subtle body. We have the 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas and 5 Pranas, they make 15. Mind and intellect, if you add them, it will become 17. Therefore, he calls it as Sapta Dasha Kala. 17 aspects of it are included in this. Now, one important point to be remembered is that though the physical instruments of, say, our eyes or nose or ears or tongue and skin, all these are the grossest part of the physical element, what do you call as the senses, which are there as the instruments. The actual location of these instruments, that means the connecting link that actually enables us to see or hear, all those are there in the subtle body, both pertaining to the organs of action and organs of senses. See, basically, the functioning of these organs in the physical body are in a way connected to the brain center through the nervous system. Through the nervous system, they are all connected to the brain. And if there is any damage to this nervous system, then the brain cannot receive the inputs properly, and therefore that particular organ doesn't function. But there is a very important aspect which we have to remember, which is that apart from the nervous system, the life force which flows through the whole human constitution, constituting of the 3 bodies and the 5 sheaths and all that, the life force which acts through all these things is in the subtle body. So the subtle body is actually the repository of the life force, and it is connected to the physical body, and it is the life force which acts through the nervous system and through the brain and the physical body. You understand this point now? See, the nervous system is also a physical network. But what is it that makes the nervous system function? That is the life force. What makes the whole nervous system, the physical organs of senses and physical organs of action, All these things function on account of the life force. And the life force is the main source through which we are able to actually function. Without the life force, nothing functions. Therefore, it is the prana aspect of it. And the prana is also, there are 5 aspects of the prana. And another aspect that is being pointed out very clearly here is that the manas and the buddhi also form a part of the subtle body. Now, one interesting point to be remembered is that there are 3 bodies as far as Vedanta is concerned, and 5 sheaths or 5 koshas. Now, what is the difference between a body and a kosha? A kosha is a particular envelope which functions at its own level and at its own plane. The bodies are connected to these koshas in the sense, if we take the Manomaya kosha and the Annamaya and Pranamaya. Annamaya and Pranamaya form one aspect of the koshas. The Manomaya kosha forms another aspect of it. The Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya are higher levels of sheaths which envelop the whole human system, which can function at its own level. The Vijnanamaya kosha cannot function at a lower level. The Manomaya kosha cannot function at a much lower level, but they are all connected to the whole system. So there are actually 2 bodies, 2 sheaths connected with the higher aspect, which we come to as the Karana Sharira. Which is the Vijnanamaya and the Anandamaya koshas are connected to the Karana Sharira. To the Sukshma Sharira are connected the Pranamaya and Manomaya. To the Sthula, it is only the Annamaya. So Annamaya is the sheath is connected, kosha is connected to the Sthula Sharira. The Pranamaya and Manomaya koshas are connected to the Sukshma Sharira. The Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya koshas are connected to the Karana Sharira. This division has to be very clearly understood. There are only 3 bodies from the Vedantic point of view, but 5 sheaths are there. These 5 sheaths are connected this way. So the Pranamaya and Manomaya together compose the Sukshma Sharira. And this Pranamaya kosha is the one through which the prana flows. And we are also told that the chakras are located in the Pranamaya kosha. And the chakras from the Pranamaya kosha are indirectly or through a very subtle process connected to the physical parts of the body. Like for example, the Anahata chakra is at the heart. The Vishuddha chakra is at the throat. The Manipuraka is at the navel. These are all centers from the physical body point of view, but their actual chakras are in the Sukshma Sharira. And another important aspect he is bringing out here is this is Apanchikrita Pancha Mahabhutaihi. There is no process of Panchikarana as far as the Sukshma Sharira is concerned. The Sukshma Sharira comes into being prior to the gross body, and the Panchikarana process which we discussed last time happens only with respect to the physical. The Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body, there is no Panchikarana, and therefore these Pancha Mahabhutas act together all through the body. One very interesting aspect that has been mentioned to us is that these what do you call as the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, the entire body is capable of acting as different organs. That means it can see through the entire body. It can hear through the entire body because it is mostly connected in the form of vibrations. It is mostly connected in the form of vibrations and not like what we see here. For example, if I close my eyes, I cannot see. If I close my ears, I cannot see, I cannot hear. And when my eyes are there, I cannot see at the back of my head, behind my head, I cannot see. Right? So what is happening here? These physical instruments are severely restricted when it comes to the physical body. But it is not the case with the astral or the what is called as the pranamaya and manomaya kosha combination, which is the sukshma sharira. Now here, if we are able to consciously function at this level, we can simultaneously see all sides. All sides are 360 degrees vision will be there for us. 360 degrees all throughout we'll be able to hear with the entire body because it's only a case of vibrations. And there are no organs as such as recognized in the physical, at the physical level. This is the important thing as far as the Sukshma Sharira is concerned, which is Apanchikruta Panchamahabhutai. But this also is born on account of our good deeds or good actions of the past. Satkarma Janyam. Satkarma Janyam has to be understood in the context that just as somebody can be born with a physical body which is defective, that means somebody doesn't have sight, somebody is deaf and dumb, or somebody has got some other, defect in the physical body itself. So that is not totally Satkarma Janyam, but lot of bad karma is attached to that physical body through past actions only, and therefore it becomes severely defective. So the first thing is, if all our senses are functioning well and all our physical organs, that means our hands, feet, all the entire system is born normal, we should be extremely grateful for the fact that it is on account of the Satkarma done by ourselves and our parents and siblings and everybody in the family. Because if you have one defective child, you know how much of trauma the whole family undergoes. We are normally so ungrateful and we think we deserve something much more and then we are not getting it. But if you can see the fact that we have a body which is normal in all respects and normally functioning for the past 50, 60, 70 years, what more do we want? Do we need something extra beyond that? Because all that we have to achieve on our own. It's not given by somebody, but karma has given this body or this set of bodies which are normal. There can be defects in the Sukshma Sharira also, which are automatically carried over to the physical body. So that's why he calls this also as Satkarma Janyam. This also is called as Satkarma Janya. This also is on account of the good actions of the past. And here, there he has said that Sukha Dukkha Adi Bhoga Ayatanam, with respect to the Sthula Sharira or the gross body, he says Ayatana means a place of residence where all these things are there at one place. The gross body is the residence or the location of or the major instrument for experiencing pleasure, pain and other things. Here he says Sukha Dukkha the Dukkhadi Bhoga Sadhanam. This is a means. There it is physically located, or an instrument has been created where all these things are provided for us to enjoy pleasure and pain. Now, what is the means of enjoyment of that pleasure and pain? The means of enjoyment of that pleasure and pain is the Sukshma Sharira. That means without the Sukshma Sharira, there cannot be a physical body, there cannot be a gross body, there cannot be a gross body which is functioning properly unless the Sukshma Sharira is functioning properly. It provides, it is the source or means for our enjoying pleasure and pain and other experiences. And therefore he says the Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas and the Pancha Pranas are in this particular Sharira. That means they're connecting link. They're not physically there. They're, as we understand, this also has a is a very subtle thing, but it is still of matter only, made of matter only. But the point to be remembered is that all the connecting links are there in the Sukshma Sharira, including the mind and the intellect. These two are also there in the Sukshma Sharira. Therefore, he says all these 17 together, wherever they are there, that composition is called as the Sukshma Sharira. This is the important aspect to be remembered as far as the Sukshma Sharira is concerned. The gross and the subtle go together, but one important point to be remembered is, though this is subtle in the sense that we cannot see or visualize or know anything about it through our gross body, but it is still made of matter only. It is still material only. The Sukshma Sharira is a material body, but of a very fine matter which is super physical in nature, and therefore we cannot see it or know anything about it from the physical body point of view. But as a body, the Sukshma Sharira comes into being first, and then the gross body creation happens. And this Sukshma Sharira is the source or the means of all activities pertaining to the gross body, whether we are acting through the senses or through the organs of action or the flow of the different pranas, our thinking and faculty of what is called as determining decision making process, all this happens in the Sukshma Sharira. All the connecting links are there in the Sukshma Sharira. This is an important aspect which we have to remember. Otherwise, what happens is that there can be confusion as to these two bodies. Can you give me one minute, please? Can you just give me 1 minute? I think I got back my regular net connection. Let me check up. Connect automatically. Yeah, it is connected. I'll disconnect my mobile thing. Just hold on. Yeah, the connection is still there. You are able to see me now and hear me? Right. Thank you.
Yes. Can I ask something now, or?
Yes, please ask. No problem. Yeah, Janik Ramdev.
So the Sukshma Sharira is called etheric body.
No.
And also all that chakras are in this?
No. One thing we have to remember is the Theosophical classification is slightly different. The Theosophical classification says that this physical body and the etheric double are one unit. The astral and mental are actually, lower mental are actually divided from the in the Theosophical classification. But that's one entity called as astro-mental entity, which is the Manomaya Kosha of Vedanta. Okay. The etheric double and the etheric double is the Pranamaya Kosha. The Pranamaya Kosha and Manomaya Kosha together form the Sukshma Sharira. That's why I said these are two koshas and one body. The gross body is
Okay,
one
thank
body.
you. Clear now. Clear. Okay.
Is it clear? The Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya go into the
That is why mind and breath are connected and it gets
Yes.
affected. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a slight difference in the classification. No, the Theosophical Investigations and their books, they tell us that the astral actually functions independently in some respects, but actually it is an astro-mental entity. The Manomaya Kosha is an astro-mental entity, and in the Vedanta we call it as the Ashuddha Manas. What is called as the lower mind is the Ashuddha Manas, because it is
That is
always...
a kama sharira.
Yes,
But
yeah,
Manisa used to tell desire
yes,
body.
desire. So the mind body, the lower mental body, which is attached to the desire part of it, it becomes polluted by this desire aspect of it, and therefore called as the impure. I'm wantonly not going into the theosophical these things, but there is they have given a greater clarity in certain respects. And as you have rightly said, the etheric double is the locatory body for the chakras and the flow of the prana.
No.
That is
Thank
why if you are able to consciously function and control the etheric double, you don't need to take food or air. Food, water, or air is not required for the physical body, and that is the yogic practice that comes into play, where you are in control of your chakras and you have vivified your chakras. But that also there are some dangers in the vivification of chakras and all. We'll not go into that subject. But basically the idea is clear. Janaki Ramji, hope.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Very clear. Very clear. Thank you.
Okay. So now this is the aspect of it, right? So this is the Sukshma Sharira. Are you? Let me just share the again. Let me share the screen. Yeah. Are you able to see the screen now? Is the screen visible? Okay.
Yes, visible.
Yeah, right. So now these pranas also flow through it. The pranas, 5 pranas are prana, apana, vyana, udana, and samana. We'll not discuss it here. There is another this thing connected with these 5 pranas. We will discuss that at that point of view. And in fact, there are 5 upapranas also. The upapranas are the subordinate pranas called as Nagaha, Kurmaha, Krukaraha, Devadattaha, Dhananjayaha. These are the 5 upapranas, they call it, which allow the functioning of some of the important involuntary aspects of the physical body. Like, for example, our eyes keep blinking. Now this, the blinking of the eye, they say, is on account of an upaprana called as Naga. Naga unmilane sprutah. Naga, that prana is called as, upaprana is called as Naga. That means, they say that there is a particular disease called the disease where the eyes don't blink. It's a terrible problem. It's a terrible problem because the eyes become dry and all kinds of things can go into the eye where you are unable to blink. Most of the time blinking for us happens involuntarily, and we can do it voluntarily also. But this blinking is controlled by an upaprana called as Naga. Similarly, when we yawn, there is a particular upaprana called as Devadatta, God given. The meaning of the word Devadatta is given by gods. Yawning is a gift actually, because sometimes it is said that when the brain doesn't have enough oxygen, it takes a lot of oxygen through the mouth and then the brain. That means when you feel sleepy, it's obviously because of low activity of the brain and not properly being fed through the blood and the air oxygen that is required. So they have given 5 upapranas also. I'll not go into much of the details, but they are of curiosity, and they are of interest to know that such upapranas have also been recognized. Okay, so this is the Sukshma Sharira. I hope the basic idea of the Sukshma Sharira is clear. Then we can go to the next slide, which is talking about the Jnanendriyas. Shrotram, Tvak, Chakshuhu, Rasana, Ghranam iti Pancha Jnanendriyani. Shrotrasya Digdevata, Tvacho Vayuhu, Chakshushaha Suryaha, Rasanaya Varunaha, Ghranasya Ashvinau iti Jnanendriya Devataha. Very, very beautifully put. There is a lot of esoteric, information that is given, which is not normally available anywhere else. Such beautiful information and useful information is provided here. Ear, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose. Skin is the sense of touch, tongue is for the sense of taste, and nose is for the sense of smell. These 5 are called as Jnanendriyas, or organs of perception. Ear, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose. Right? Now, ear, the presiding deity is the space or dik, Akasha. Akasha is the presiding deity for the ear. You have to link it to the fact that all creation emanates from the unmanifest sound, which is the Nada Brahma. The unmanifest becomes manifest, and it becomes Shabda Brahma. And the Shabda Brahma, the element connected with that is the space or Akasha. Don't again relate it to the physical space. Physical space is included in that, but there is a subtler aspect of this physical space, just as there is a subtler aspect of air. All these, I think in one of the earlier sessions I have discussed that these 5 Mahabhutas have their subtler aspects also connected with this. So the ear, the Devata presiding over the ear is the ear, space. Devata, the word used in the Vedas and Upanishads, essentially means energy. They are actually called as Devas because they are shining. Shining means they are always pulsating and vibrating. Generally, 2 things happen with any vibration. Every vibration is associated with some color also. That is why we get the spectrum, the band. The spectrum band is both a vibratory frequency and also a color frequency associated with it. So Devata does not mean a god or goddess or a demigod sitting there and controlling the ears or controlling the nose. No. It is the subtle energy functioning through space, due to which the ear is functioning normally. Both in the Sukshma Sharira and the Sthula Sharira, both. The energy, the vibratory energy, or you can even relate it to the respective, visual energy, which is in the form of some color. And because it's of a very high frequency, these types of energies radiate a particular color also, and generally they are of the color of silver at the astral level. If you see the meaning of the word astral, it is related to this whitish or silver color. So they are vibrating at a very high frequency, certain energies, which are also appearing to be very shining, and therefore they are called as Deva. The meaning of the word Deva is Divyate Anenai the Devaha. Divyate means shining one. In the early theosophical literature, the Devatas are also referred to as the shining ones. There's a reference, actually, they say they use the term the shining ones to Devatas. So the Devata associated with our ear is Dik or space. And please remember, we are not talking about the physical space alone, we are talking about the subtler aspect of it, which comes from a much higher level. Similarly, the Devata associated with our skin is air. Vayu is a Deva. The Devata associated with our eyes is Surya, the sun, which is the source of all light. Without light, the eyes cannot function. Only when there is light, the eyes can see. However minimum it may be, however minimal light it may be, it has to be there in order for us to see. If it's totally pitch dark, you can't see anything, even though we may keep our eyes open. So the presiding deity for the eyes is Surya, and Rasana is the tongue for taste. The concerned Devata is Varuna. Varuna is also associated with anything fluid or liquid. He is called as Varuna Devata. Varuna, as I said, is connected with liquids and all kinds of fluids which flow. And what happens as far as our functioning of our tongue is concerned? It is always wet, and it is supposed to be wet. If the tongue becomes dried, totally dried, that means there is some problem. If there is a serious dehydration, it starts with the mouth. You feel dehydrated once your mouth is completely dry. So it has to be wet always. And the fluid, the Devata associated with all liquids and fluids is Varuna. And then Ghrana is nose, or the aspect related to smell, or the instrument related to the smell. These are the ear, the nose is ruled by two twins. There's the Ashwini Kumaras, they are called as Ashwini Kumaras. Ashwini Kumaras, they are always twins. And interestingly, if you do some research on the internet, you find that across cultures, these Ashwini Kumaras have been identified because they come from much before the Proto-Indo-European culture and languages. So these Ashwini Kumaras are also considered to be associated with medicine and herbs. They are considered to be two great healers. And one of the aspects is that if your nose is not functioning, then there is a serious problem. If you are unable to smell something, that means there is a serious defect in the system. And it is now being said with respect to this COVID-19 that those who are infected by this virus, they lose temporarily for some time the smell, the sense of smell. That means the Devatas, the Ashwini Kumaras are not functioning properly. And there are two nostrils. So therefore, these two are connected through the twins called as Ashwini Kumaras. unlike the ears and the eyes, which are distinct, the nose as a whole forms one unit, though it has two nostrils. And we are also told that these twins, called as Ashwini Kumaras, they appear in the Rigveda. Number of times there is this reference is there to the Ashwini Kumaras. And they are also considered to be what they call as the literal translation is that something which is brought home. That is the meaning of these Kumaras. The Rigveda describes the Ashwins as they bring light. They bring that kind of raised sense, and it's actually called as return to home safely. There's an interesting linkage. Nasa or Nasika is also the instrument. And one of the Ashwini Kumaras in the Rigveda refers to is referred to as the Lord Sumukha, and the other one as Son of Heaven. Now, when I was doing some research, I found that this name called Sumukha is a very interesting name. Sumukha in the sense, one who has a good face. Now look at it. If you don't, however beautiful your entire face may be, if the nose is not there, the whole face becomes ugly. So what gives the beauty to the whole face, or which is called as the Uttamanga, is the nose. And that is why if somebody was to be disfigured, they would cut off their nose and ears, which form the face and which actually give beauty to the face. We have the example of Shurpanakha, and why that subsequently also even in recent times and all, whenever there are the brutal wars and all, whenever they capture the enemies and all, they cut off their noses and things like that. They do very brutal things. But the nose is what gives a beauty to the face. And therefore, one of the Ashwini Kumaras is also called as Sumukha. And before I close this, we'll go to another important aspect of it. The Tanmatras, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha are respectively associated with these 5 Jnanendriyas. Shrotra or the ear is concerned with Shabda. Twak or skin is concerned with Sparsha or feeling, sensation of touch. Rupa is concerned with the eye. You can see any form only through the eyes. Rasa is the essence of taste. The Tanmatra connected with is the Rasana or the tongue. And Gandha, the Tanmatra associated with the nose is the Gandha. And these are associated with the Pancha Mahabhutas also. Gandha is associated with Prithvi or earth. Rasa or Rasana is associated with Apas or water. Tejas or light is associated, the Tanmatra is associated with the, what do you call as the Panchamahabhutas is associated with Chakshu or the ears. Vayu, the Tanmatra is associated with touch. Here also the Dig Devata, the Devata concerned with the sense of touch is called as Vayu. And finally, the Shrotra or what is called as the ear is associated with Akasha. Prithvi, Apas, Tejo, Vayu, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha are the Pancha Mahabhutas. They also have a subtler aspect of it and a grosser aspect of it. The five Jnanendriyas are associated with them, and then these Jnanendriyas are connected to the presiding deities, as we have seen. So when you say Devata, please imagine them to be connected with a particular vibration, a frequency in terms of sound, and similarly a corresponding vibration with respect to light. So they are visible from the light frequency and vibration point of view, and you can hear them through the vibration of that particular energy in the form of some form of sound. And that is why everything is derived from the Akasha. Akashat Vayu Rajayata. From the Akasha comes Vayu, from the Vayu comes Tejas, from the Tejas comes Apas, from the Apas comes the Prithvi. This is the sequence given for us. And the basis for all this is the Akasha. So they are all connected. The Jnanendriyas, the Karmendriyas, the Pancha Mahabhutas, the Pancha Tanmatras, all these are related to each other, connected closely with each other. And that's how you are able to see. Okay, so these are to be the beauty of these devatas. I don't want to go much deeper into this aspect again because that itself will be a separate subject. I did because I was doing some online research. I could find some interesting things about Ashwini Kumaras. Okay, so this is the five Jnanendriyas. Then we will go to the further aspect of it is being described. Shrotrasya Vishayaha Shabda Grahanam, Tvacho Vishayaha Sparsha Grahanam, Chakshusho Vishayaha Rupa Grahanam, Rasanaya Vishayaha Rasa Grahanam, Granasya Vishayaha Gandha Grahanam iti. We have seen this. The field of experience for the ear is the reception of sound. For the skin is the cognition of touch. For the eyes is the perception of forms. For the tongue is the cognition of taste, and for the nose is the cognition of smell. We have already seen this. There's nothing much to go into it. We'll go to the next one. These are the five karmendriyas or organs of action. Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upasthaniti, Pancha karmendriyani, Vacho Devata Vahnihi, Hastayor Indraha, Padayor Vishnuhu, Payor Mrutyuhu, Upasthasya Prajapatihi, iti Karmendriya Devataha. This is also a very, very interesting subject. I'll not dwell too much on it. It's already 12:35. We started late anyway, but let me go on up to 1 o'clock. I'll elaborate on this. Vak is the ability to speak. It is an organ of action, our ability to speak. Pani is the hands, our ability to grasp things, being mobile and all that. Pada is the legs. Payu refers to the excretory organ, generally called as the anus, which is the outermost one. But the entire excretory system as a whole is connected with this Payu. And Upastha is the genitals and the reproductive organs. And therefore, these five are organs of action and they are called as Karmendriyas. Now look at the beauty now. The presiding deity of the speech is fire. Two aspects are there. One is the associated organ, physical organ is the mouth through which we speak. Mouth is also important for consuming food and liquids. Whatever nourishment we consume is through the mouth. And the Agni connected with this is in the Jatara, is in the stomach, the digestive fire. It's called as Jatara Agni. It is that fire which digests anything we consume. So if that fire is not properly there, food cannot be digested properly. That means there are actually, we are told that the stomach has a highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. And those who have studied some chemistry will know that the maximum concentration of hydrochloric acid we can find is only 33%. The remaining part of it is only water. But even that 33% is so high, concentrated and so high that if you just put a drop of it on the hand, it will simply go through it and then create a beautiful hole. It will burn through the whole thing without even a drop of blood coming out. You can make a hole out in this hand by just a drop of that hydrochloric acid. Such a concentrated acid is there in the stomach, and the stomach lining is capable of withstanding that. That's how the human body has evolved. But because of this acid which is required for the digestion, and it has that quality of burning, it is called as an Agni. Jadharagni is. But another Agni is there. Another problem with this Vacha or Vak is our ability to speak. And if you see in this world, most of the time, maybe almost all of us might have hurt somebody or the other through our words. We can spit fire through the mouth, through hatred, through jealousy, through envy, through anger. You see the point? Therefore, there also a fire is connected with it. So the presiding deity of speech is fire. Vacho devata vahnihi. See, the biggest sadhana from a spiritual point of view is if we can control our diet and our speech. We have won 90 or 95% of the battle is won on the spiritual path. If we are able to control our mouth in terms of what we consume or take in, and through speech what we give out. One we take in, the other is what we give out. If these two are actually controlled, then 95% of the battle on the spiritual path is won. There's nothing much to do. Rest of it is only, refinement of other aspects of the mind. But these two are the most important things. Hastayor Indraha. For the hands, the Lord is Indra. Our ability to do action. Most of the action is done by the hands. And Indra is the presiding deity. And for the legs, it is Vishnu. The Pada is connected with Vishnu, the lowest part of the body. Why? The word Vishnu means all pervading. And feet are considered to be that aspect which can take you everywhere and anywhere. It's only a representative or symbolic way of putting it, where they can take you anywhere and everywhere. And therefore, it is the feet, the presiding deity of the feet is Vishnu. And you can link this aspect of Vishnu to the Vamana Avatara. With one foot, he occupies the entire space. With one foot, he occupies the entire earth. And with the third foot, he asks for the space of three padas. When he appears as a Vamana, to demolish or to suppress or eliminate Bali Chakravarti. He was a demon king, but considered to be having so many other good qualities also. So he crushes him into the Patala, the lowest level of the 14 planes of existence. There also it is the importance of Pada which Vishnu demonstrates in the Vamana Avatar. We will not go into the esoteric aspect of this there, because we can take it up in some other context, but this is Pada is Vishnu, the preceding deity. And Payur, Mrutyuhu, this is another thing. The organ of excretion is ruled by the deity death, mrityu. We have seen in one of the earlier cases where the Ayurveda very clearly says that if your excretory functions stop, then you are on the verge of death. The excretory functions stop or become active for some time and completely stop. Then it is said that you are almost on the edge of death. So the excretory function is the most important function, whereby a person is said to be healthy if the excretory functions are normal and proper. The person is considered to be healthy.
I want to share something here since you are giving importance to that.
Yeah.
My maternal grandfather, I still remember from a young age, what he used to ask sometimes as, grandchildren. If the God comes in front of you, what will you ask? So we used to be wondering. He will tell, morning, first thing I should go to the toilet. That is sufficient because God knows all your other requirements.
No, the other way, the joke could be that if you have to urgently go to the toilet, at that time, if God comes also, you will push him out and go and sit in the toilet. So this function becomes very, very important for us, and everything else becomes subordinate. In the sense, it is the life principle, the normal functioning of the excretory organs is the life principle. That means if your life is ebbing or going away, then you are on the verge of death, and that is why it is presided over by the god of death. There is another esoteric aspect of it. Because of lack of time, I'll not go into it. We'll talk about these devatas in a separate session later on. Then upasthasya prajapatihi. Prajapati is the progenitor. Brahma is considered to be the first Prajapati, the creator, one who brings forth all living creatures. He is called as Prajapati. There are several Prajapatis. Each Manu is also called as a Prajapati. We have the Vaivasvata Manu presiding over this Manvantara. Each Manu is also called as a Prajapati because he is the, and from the word Manu comes the word Manava. Manava or human being, as we refer in several languages, the word Manava comes from Manu. That means we are the progeny of the progenitor called Manu. And therefore the Upastha or the presiding deity pertaining to our reproductive organs is the Prajapati. So these are the Devatas who preside over the Karmendriyas. So very interestingly, you see the beauty of all these, as I said, very beautifully we have been given some deep knowledge about the various energies functioning for the activity of the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. For the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas to function normally, let us not imagine that I am capable of doing anything. There are subtler and subtler and subtler aspects of energies through the vibration of which all these organs are functioning. That is the most important thing which we have to understand. And that is what is given here. Now we'll go to the next slide and see.
So one point here, Vishnu actually is the presiding deity for feet means we should walk in the right path. That is the message.
Yes, that could be one way of interpreting it. But there are some other esoteric aspects of it, which we can go into, as I said.
Understood. Okay, fine.
I'll give much more insight into these things. I myself am in the process of doing further research and referring some texts and other things to find out more information about the nature of these devatas. Okay.
Sir, Pada, like Vishnu, you said, Pada also shows movement, pervading.
Yes, pervading, all pervading. That's what I said.
All pervading, which is a movement. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned when I said Pada is that which takes you everywhere and anywhere, which is all pervading. Yeah, right. Vacho Vishayaha Bhashanam. The function of the organ of the speech is to speak. Panyor Vishayaha Vastu Grahanam. The function of the hands is to grasp things. Padayor Vishayaha Gamanam. The function of the legs is locomotion or movement. Payor Vishayaha Malatyagaha. The functioning of the excretory organ is the elimination of the waste products. And Upasthasya Vishayaha Ananda iti. The genital or reproductive organ, it is pleasure or procreation is associated with it. One important aspect to be remembered here is, in our system, it has been very clearly pointed out that from the grossest pleasure to the highest bliss, it is the same aspect connecting it. It is the Ananda aspect which is connecting the grossest form of physical pleasure to the highest form of bliss. It is all through its Ananda. At the gross level also it is referred to as Ananda, but more importantly it is generally referred to as Sukha or pleasure. See, the connecting link has to be seen. Without this aspect of Ananda, there won't be procreation. There won't be consumption of food. There won't be functioning of the ears. There won't be the functioning of the eyes. There won't be the functioning of the nose. All these organs always are connected with the aspect of beauty. Beauty in some form or the other, which has to give some pleasure or Ananda at different levels. That is why the essential aspect of the ultimate reality is Satchidananda. You see the point? And similarly, the derivative aspect of it is Satyam Shivam Sundaram. It is Satyam Shivam Sundaram are the derivative aspects of Sat Chit and Ananda. For Ananda, it is connected to Sundaram. It's connected with beauty in every form. Beauty in terms of, say, music, beauty in terms of dance, if you see, for the eyes, for the ears, for the nose, for the sense of the organ of speech, and then the reproductive organs, everything is connected to this aspect of Ananda. Without that aspect of it, there won't be any life. Life is connected to this Satchidananda at the highest level, and at the derivative level, it is connected with Satyam, Shivam and Sundaram. Chit is the consciousness aspect. Consciousness, what does it want? It always wants peace. It always wants tranquility. Therefore, it is Shivam. Shiva means tranquility, peace, welfare, well-being is the aspect of Shiva. So we have to link up all these things and see how actually they start functioning. So this whole thing is, though divided into so many aspects, they are all connected, very closely interlinked, and any misfunctioning, any malfunctioning anywhere will get reflected through all the bodies, all the functions and all the aspects of the manifestation. Left to itself, it is perfect. But having come into this through our ignorance or ajnana, we create all this mess. The whole mess is created through our ignorance. So the fundamental aspect or the fundamental purpose of life is to get rid of this ignorance, so that you can restore the whole thing to its pristine purity and divine state of functioning. That is the idea of it. And the next slide. I'll not go to the next slide because we will be starting the Karana Sharira. It's almost, I think we started at 11:50 and it is 12:50. It is 1 o'clock. If there are any questions, I can go. We can discuss. I'll stop this sharing part of it. Next week, we will take up the Karana Sharira, which is another very important aspect of it, of the three Shariras or the human constitution as a whole. Any questions? One chat, one I can see. Excellent.
See, one question for Guru Purnima.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of what
and a lot of WhatsApp messages are also coming about this. I have been talking about this for the past 40 years almost. See, the classification in the Indian system is very, very clear. See, we call at the basic level, the teacher, the primary school teacher, we call him as Adhyapaka. The next level is Upadhyaya. The third level is Acharya. The fourth level is Pandita. The fifth level is Drashta and the sixth level is Guru. These are the various terms we use. Adhyapaka at the lowest level gives information. One who provides information is called as an Adhyapaka. For example, at the primary school level, somebody says that this is a pen or this is a pencil. This is a pencil. This is the information given. You are naming it and showing the form. This pencil is there and the name is pencil and this is the physical representation or physical aspect of the pencil. This information is given by the Adhyapaka. The Upadhyaya gives you the usage of this information or what we call as knowledge, that this pen is meant for writing. You should not misuse it. You are supposed to use it for a specific purpose and therefore it is for writing. Such a person is called an Upadhyaya who gives you knowledge. The third level is an Acharya. Acharya gives you skill. He'll tell you how best to apply this knowledge. Application of knowledge is an Acharya who gives skill. That's why Dronacharya, Krupacharya, these are Acharyas who have tremendous skill in archery, in using different forms of weapons and missiles and all that. Therefore, they impart what is called a skill. Such a person is an Acharya. Then comes the Pandita. Pandita is one who gives you insight into things. He will give you insight into the skill, how to develop skill or how to, develop new types of skills. Once you have an insight into things, you become innovative. Once you have an insight into doing certain things, you become innovative, and that is provided by the Pandita. Then Drashta. Drashta gives you foresight. One who provides you foresight is a Drashta. No, you should be able to visualize things in future, how things are going to change in future, how one should prepare oneself for the future, or how one should lead the creativity and innovation and other things into future. That is the Drashta. And finally, the one who provides you with the true wisdom is called as a Guru. So everybody cannot be classified under one broad head of Guru, which becomes a source of exploitation. It becomes a source of exploitation. See, a Guru is also only a guide or a pointer. Guru is also a guide or a pointer only. He can't do beyond that. He can provide you a guidance up to a certain level. Rest of it goes into what is called as one's own self. Therefore, the communication at that level is only silence. And the highest symbolic form of a Guru is Dakshinamurti. Dakshinamurti is the highest form of Guru. Chitram Vatataror Mule Vruddha Shishyaha Gurur Yuva. Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Samshaya. Binaji, you asked for a shloka. This Dakshinamurti Stotra has this beautiful shloka which says, how wonderful, how fascinating it is. Chitram Vatataror Mule, under the Vatavruksha, under the banyan tree. What do you find? Vruddha Shishyaha Gurur Yuva. The disciples are old and the Guru is young. Because knowledge is, wisdom is always young. Wisdom doesn't age. Therefore, he symbolizes that wisdom, and therefore he is yuva, he is young always, and the disciples are old. And how is the discourse going on? He says, Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam. The Guru is doing a Mauna Vyakhyana. They are giving a silent discourse. And Shishyastu Chinna Samshayaha. All the doubts and questions in the minds of the disciples are all completely eradicated or eliminated. So silent discourse is the best discourse. So Dakshinamurti is a personification of Guru. And you know the meaning of Dakshina? Dakshina means right. Dakshina also means giving. So he is always right and always giving. You do pradakshina in a temple. What is the symbolism? The symbolism is you will always keep to the right side of things. Righteousness. Keep moving right side only. Clockwise direction is the direction which always makes you turn to the right. And electromagnetic field theory also tells us that if there is a source of energy and if you go around it, the direction of that energy is upwards. So when you are moving around a source of energy, the deity in a temple, you are doing a pradakshina. Pradakshina means prakrishtena. Prakrishta means very excellently, very purposefully, very seriously one who is doing doing the right thing always. That it's a symbol of the mind always turning to the right, always being right. And as I said, we use this term dakshina. When you give something, dakshina dena, dan dena. The dakshina means giving. So one should be, from a spiritual point of view, always treading the path of righteousness and always with a mind which is giving. Always giving, no taking. Whatever you have, give it. Whatever you can in any form, you give it. That should be the attitude, and that is the meaning of this, and that is what is symbolized by Dakshinamurti. He is the Murti, means an idol, an icon, a personification of what? Of what is right, what is righteousness, what is always giving. He doesn't need anything. He doesn't take anything. No Guru Dakshina. Guru Dakshina is something which you give to the Guru. Here, Dakshinamurti himself is the Guru and he is giving everything and he is not taking anything, he is not asking for anything from anybody. So he is the Guru. He is the ultimate Guru. And who is it who can give you a silent discourse? Your own inner self. The inner ruler immortal. He is going to give a silent discourse always to you to keep to the path of righteousness and always be in a state of giving rather than receiving, because by receiving you are only accumulating karma. By giving you are eliminating karma to a great extent. You are eliminating karma because you are not, it is not the selfish aspect of me which is giving, but that righteousness is making me give. And therefore we are giving.
Thank you so much. And Beena has asked a question which relates to inner ruler immortal.
Yeah. Anchalji, yeah, thank you so much, Anchalji. Please explain deep sleep with respect to Shariras. Deep sleep, see, the fundamental point to be remembered is, it is only the physical body which requires rest. Nourishment and rest are required only for the physical body. The Sukshma Sharira and the Karana Shariras do not require any rest, do not require any nourishment. Then whatever nourishment is provided while we are in the physical body and functioning goes to the Sukshma Sharira, and in a much subtler form goes to the Karana Sharira, but they themselves do not require per se nourishment or rest. So only the physical body which requires rest and recuperation and also nourishment in some form or the other. Otherwise, it is not necessary. In functioning in any other bodies, those bodies do not require sleep at all. But that's the basic factor to be remembered with this, with respect to the shariras. It's only the sthula sharira which requires sleep. Anything else?
So I have a question.
Thank you. Yeah, please, Parth, tell me.
So a couple of things you mentioned, right? For example, you mentioned good food and control over your voice or what you speak.
Yes.
Does most of the job, So that is a quick actionable item, which I can implement practically in my life right now.
Anybody.
Right?
Yes.
And similarly, let's say yesterday you spoke of, to be able to observe yourself and, and see what you are not. Negation, let's say the body.
Right.
Because
Right.
you are aware of the body, that means you are different from the body in one way and you can actually observe that.
Yes.
Similarly, the rest of the things regarding awareness that you mentioned about negating. So today you spoke a lot about different types of bodies and the properties of different types of bodies, how they function. And now you also mentioned the yogis have a capability where they can actually, let's say, control these subtle bodies.
Yes.
But what is the takeaway, for me right now, after having understood what is the actionability that, in practical life today, right now, after listening to you, what I can do with respect to, there's so much content regarding the subtle bodies. Because if I observe and try to, look for the subtle bodies, I don't see anything,
No, you need not see the subtle bodies. Basically, your feelings and emotions are the factors related to your subtle bodies. Your feelings and thinking, your emotions and your thought process are the things which are associated with your subtle bodies. And being aware of those things, how the thought is behaving, how a feeling or emotion is behaving, is a very actionable point, which tells us through observation as to what are my propensities, what are my weaknesses, or what is it that I am continuously dwelling upon. Why am I pursuing a particular kind of pleasure or particular kind of thought process? Why am I holding on to certain dimensions of my feelings and emotions only, and why I am not able to relate it to the functionality of it? Because once you know the function of it and know that this is not the true self, this is not the me which I can really identify myself with, then you will be able to know that just as you move a hand when you want it, similarly you can exercise your thought power and your emotional power also to use it as and when required, and not randomly at any time and every time, and let loose the whole thing and let them dominate you. So it's a question of slowly understanding the structure and function of the human constitution, whereby it becomes easier for us to transcend this. That's the only purpose. Without this knowledge also one can transcend it. That's not an issue. But by knowing this, it becomes easier. Okay, I have always been dominated by my thoughts and my emotions, which function only in a restricted field. And therefore, I am not able to see the vastness of things and the wholeness of things. Therefore, I need to understand the limitations of these bodies and their functions and other things, which help me to transcend it.
Got it, sir.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Now, as you said, for all of us, the right thing is that right way of starting the actionable thing is speak less, eat less, do more work, and be happy. What more do you want? And practically, I am saying it. My health has substantially improved over the past 1 week to 10 days. After my wife has gone to US and I am doing the cooking. I have become active, and my food also has come down. Intake has come down, and my physical body is better off now. My diabetes is under much control, and I'm not feeling that this thing. Otherwise, earlier I was thinking I'm a great intellectual and reading this and reading that, and spending time on the net and talking about all nonsensical things like Tattva Bodha and all that. All that is, without implementation, what is the purpose of it? Now, when I am implementing it and making some food, preparing some food, I am engaged for 3-4 hours in the day, which itself is giving me sufficient exercise and keeping my body under control. And obviously, my focus is on that, and I am forced to talk less. So these are all things which are practically, when you start doing it, you find the importance of it. The importance of it, right? So that is the starting point. Why are the deities mentioned mostly male? What about the deities like Shakti and Saraswati, where they are some feministic aspect is being brought here, Anuji? Energy has got no gender per se. See, energy has no gender. These are personifications are given male names, but please understand one very important thing. All these energies which I have talked about are subordinate energies. The presiding deity, the boss is Shakti. The boss is Prakriti. What more do you want? We are all functioning under you. We are all your subordinates. So you are the Shakti. The feminine aspect is Prakriti. The Purusha fellow he is idle. He sits idly, he doesn't do anything. The Purusha doesn't do anything. It is the Prakriti, the Shakti, which presides, the presiding deity. See, for example, Prakriti is feminine, Shakti is feminine, Maya is feminine. These are the three things which are causing all the damage to all the males. All the men are subordinate to them. These three aspects of it. So without Shakti, all these male deities cannot function at all. So please remember that it's only a functional aspect of it and nothing to do with gender, right? But essentially, it is the feminine aspect of it which is the dominant principle for manifestation. Okay. So,
and sir, when we mention,
yeah,
when intelligent and mind is mentioned, it is for Saraswati.
Yes.
Isn't it, sir? Yeah. Intelligence is Saraswati.
Buddhi is feminine.
Buddhi. Yes.
Buddhi is feminine.
Creative ideas. Vaho Arnas Saraswati. Prachetayati Ketuna. All that is Saraswati.
In the Amarakosha, I keep saying this. There are about 8 or 9 synonyms for Buddhi. Buddhir, Manisha, Dhishana, Dhif, Prajna, Shemushi, Matihi. All these are feminine gender terms only. And Manas in Sanskrit is a neuter gender. Manas, the term Manas is a neuter gender term. So this fellow is a Jada. Mind can function only either with the aspect connected to desire or connected to buddhi. It doesn't function independently. So that is what it is. So I hope Anuji is happy.
Is Kama also feminine?
Kama is masculine.
Masculine.
Kama is masculine.
Oh, that's interesting.
Eros, the Cupid. That fellow creates all the problem, no?
Yes.
Kama is a problem. Yeah, I'm happy. Anuji said yes, she is happy about it. Thank you. Okay, Umeshji, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much. I think if there are no more questions, we can close it. It's already 1:11.